That's what I.
That's okay. Don't use it.
That's what I. All right, so I know switch. Okay, so that which yeah, the best to say sometime.
Go ahead.
Good morning again. We're back in regular session. The commission was in executive session where we discussed legal issues, personal issues, and proprietary information. No decisions were made or votes taken, so now we're back on our agenda for April 8, 2025. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Who speaks to that matter?
Good morning, Brenda Connor, Accounts Maintenance Officer. Today, we would like to enter an assessment on the following docket 669 broadband VI in the amount of $1,330.47.
So ordered. We go to item number 3, energy matter, docket 706, Wappa Electric System rate case.
Good morning. I'll start out. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I'm going to ask and request that we table the PSC staff report on the rate case simply because we are in fact still working on the details of contracting the hearing examiner and consultants. We are in the process of reviewing all of our submittals. We have in fact identified proposed hearing examiner for that case, but we are still working on finalizing the agreements and the scope. So we request that this matter be, the report from the PSC staff be tabled until our next meeting.
Are there any objections to that? There are none, it is so ordered. Wappa battery contract. Who speaks to that?
Please raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony and evidence you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your full name for the record.
Carl Knight, CEO, Executive Director of the Water and Power Authority.
You may proceed, Mr. Knight.
Not much to proceed with here, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll wait for the question staff or the commission may have. We have executed, we have one battery contract. If that is what the commissioner is referring to at the Petronella site, we have the energy storage agreement with VI Rapsi that operates the Petronella solar farm on the island of St. Croix. That battery agreement is a lease where we lease the batteries, and we pay 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour when the batteries are discharged. The typical function for that battery is to smooth out fluctuations in the energy production from the farm during the course of the day. So as cloud cover, haze, dust interferes with the access to sunlight, those batteries sort of smooth out those fluctuations. And in the evenings, any excess power is discharged onto the grid, which allows us to sort of shift that power generation from daytime resource into the early evening hours. And like I said, once it's discharging, pay for any power that comes off the battery at 5.5 cents a kilowatt hour. I don't know if there are specific questions related to this particular item that the commissioner or the staff may have.
Mr. Hughes, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple. Thank you, Director Knight. I tried to read through that contract a couple nights ago and I got a thought and understanding of the economic terms. You have a lease payment. Could that easily just kind of be viewed as a capital lease obligation, like 25 years of leasing?
I presume so. We do have a long-term lease of long-term arrangement for the lease of those batteries that runs concurrent with the PPA.
Okay. No escalation in that lease. It didn't seem to be.
Escalation.
Okay. The power that goes into that battery, you have a PPA, you pay 10.8 cents or thereabouts a kilowatt for everything you take directly off the field and directly onto your transmission system. The stuff that you bypass the direct interconnect and instead direct into the batteries, you don't pay for that power at the 10.8 to put it in the batteries, do you?
No, we do not.
Okay, so you pay when you take it back out at 5.5-ish.
That's correct.
Okay. And those facilities are under your direct control, so you get to determine the schedule of how much you want to put in, how much you want to take out, when you want to do it.
That's correct.
Does that pretty much sum up the economic terms of the battery side of this? You got the PPA on one side and you got the battery with the lease payment and I guess the discharge pricing. Is that it in terms of money changing hands?
Yes, essentially that is it. The structure of the payment terms with VIRAPSI for the Petronella solar farm. There's a meter that meters the discharge from the solar farm. So we're billed for the megawatt hours coming off the solar farm. There's a meter that meters the discharge from the batteries. And so on the solar farm, we're billed at 10.9 cents a kilowatt hour. Coming off the batteries, we're billed at 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a separate meter. And then there's the monthly lease for the batteries. That's essentially three components of the cost structure.
I would imagine that we'll pretty quickly evolve into a steady state where WAPA knows how it wants to use those batteries on a monthly basis, the dispatch of them, if you will. I'm very interested in how much power we're taking off on a monthly basis under the PPA and how much power we're taking off under that 5.5. So that we can kind of figure out what our net cost of solar is in the territory. How long do you think it'll be until you guys have kind of evolved into a steady state of how you're going to use those two facilities?
I think we're almost there. Not the two facilities. I think we're almost there with Petronella. Hoggensburg is still.
I'm sorry. I was referring to the Petronella PPA versus the Petronella battery contract. So.
Oh, yeah. We're pretty much rounding into what I would consider to be a steady state. We experimented with some different operating conditions over the last couple of months. I think we have an idea of the best way of discharging both facilities and having an understanding of what we can expect, particularly from the battery side. So we've been able to get fairly consistent 10 megawatts of power from the solar farm. The batteries and what's available for discharge, I think we have a good understanding of what that looks like. And we also have a good understanding of how much support those batteries can provide during the daytime when we have cloud cover events. So I think the operational staff has enough hours under their belt with the Petronella farm to kind of have a understanding of how it's working. Of course, this is seasonal. So as we head into the summer months, the days are a little bit longer. So we'll make those adjustments for more solar resource as we head into the longer days. We've been operating so far on some of the shorter days of the year. And so that's just a minor tweak. But I think we have a good idea of how to forecast that.
Good. So we're about to bring Hogansburg online, of course, a little larger field, different battery configuration. Will the structure of the battery I didn't read that one. I figured it was very similar in structure, just differences in probably the lease payment and perhaps how you use it, because it has better capabilities for you in terms of discharge. So.
Yeah, the structure is going to be fairly identical to what we did with Petronella. From my experience, that has, although that was negotiated just prior to my onboarding, my experience with it's working the way I would need it to work. And so the Hogansburg agreement is going to be patterned off of what we've done with Petronella. So with very minor tweaks, but the pricing is the same, et cetera. When we get to the projects in St. Thomas, we might try and find a way to maybe, ultimately, I would like to incorporate those into the power purchase agreement instead of having it standing out by itself. But that's something that we can do after the fact, retroactive.
Okay, so these being metered capacities, I would really like that in your monthly meetings with our staff that you'd be able to report those numbers to them. I think it's a really useful number because it helps us determine the exact cost per kilowatt of renewables in the territory. As those come forward, instead of having to wait for LEAC every 3 months, we can have our staff tracking the outputs of those facilities. We haven't really ever designed with you. You're still very new. We haven't really designed a KPI or a waterfall report between you and the commission, but this is certainly one piece of what we'd love to see, together with monthly sales data, monthly generation data, that type of thing.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Knight. Are you making timely payments on those solar providers?
Yes, we are making timely payments to our arrangements with InterEnergy. As you know, or should know, BMR Energy did sell their interest to InterEnergy. We are staying current. There was some arrearage that had been accumulated previously, but we are staying current with our payments to new owners, InterEnergy, and we are also current with VIRAPSI on the Petronella Solar Farm.
So that includes everybody.
Yes, everybody.
One picture.
Mr. Knight, who owns the arrearage? InterEnergy or BMR?
That's still to be worked out. As far as I know, it's BMR.
So that mean we're still gonna get a check for the PSC?
I endeavor to do so. Certainly I had hopes to come with some good news this morning, but I'm not quite there. But yes, we are going to, as I think I committed to last month, do our best to make our obligations. Still have our concerns. There's still some discussions perhaps better suited for off the record. But certainly we will do our best to keep up with the obligations as best we can.
I have a question, and I don't know who's best to answer this, but we are provided with, can you explain, 3 contracts, correct? Is that what you sent us?
2 contracts and I think a side letter was what the third document was.
Are you referring to the addendum as the amendment as a side letter?
I believe so.
Well, let me tell you what my concern or question is. I saw 2 agreements for Petronella and what is that, Hogansburg? Signed with VI Electron.
Yes.
And then there was this amendment that was between Petronella Solar LLC and WAPA. And I wasn't sure what was the connection, because that's the one with Petronella Solar LLC is making reference to on the line agreement, but I haven't seen that. So I wasn't sure where Petronella Solar came into the picture. And I would also know that there's no year on that addendum. So I'm not, it's not a material issue, but I just noted that as I was reading the document. So I'm trying to figure out what is the connection between Petronella Solar LLC and VIE Electron, and this was the underlying contract that this addendum is making reference to.
So as with the solar farm industry, so Duno was originally Landcoast, then it was NRG, then it was BMR, now it's InterEnergy. Developer of the project was VI Electron. My understanding, I think the next assignment was to a nonprofit called VI RAPSI. And then there was an assignment to what I believe was being referred to as Petronella Solar. Matter of fact, it was swapped, but there's been a couple of assignments of transfer of the assets to other entities. So VI Electron is no longer the owner of the farm. They have assigned their interest in the farm to, I believe, the most recent owners, is it Petronella or VI RAPSI?
It's Petronella.
Petronella Solar.
But as an entity that we should get informed from here on out until
Yes.
it's assigned to somebody
Until
else.
it's assigned to somebody else. And I think similar assignments were done with Hoggensburg. So I try to be careful. It's no longer VI Electron. It's now Hoggensburg Solar LLC or whatever the name of the firm is.
Similar principles?
The similar principles of VI RAPSI. So VI RAPSI is a nonprofit entity that now owns, as far as I understand, they own Petronella Solar and Hoggensburg Solar, which is different principles than the original developer VI Electron.
I guess that's a better question for Mr. Laranger, but it's unclear to me as the developer for the project, what he's gotten out of it. Because I'm pretty sure he didn't get paid to make that transfer. So.
That's a question for the principal.
Yes.
It's not,
Okay.
not power. We just buy the power.
Good.
And that relationship is working well?
Yes, we have found that to be a productive relationship, especially as it relates to interconnection agreements, which could be a difficult negotiation. How is cost shared? How is it borne? You know, our preferences as far as points of connection, things that could have unraveled our ability to really engage with this power purchase agreement. I found that our negotiations with the developer have been very fruitful, and they have been very supportive of our the challenges that we would have, and have met us halfway with those challenges. So I'm pleased with how that has gone, and I hope I can send that signal, like that as we negotiate the other interconnection agreements for St. Thomas and St. John. Hopefully we can keep that same cordiality amongst our entity and theirs.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from Mr. Knight?
Yes, what percentage of your total production is provided by solar? What percentage?
That's a number I need to have. I don't know if Mrs. Laverniere has an answer. What I can tell you is right now, at peak, we're producing 14 megawatts of solar on St. Croix with a peak of about 41 megawatts at peak. And then on St. Thomas, we're still at 5 megawatts out of a peak of about 63 megawatts. I don't have handy with me megawatt hour comparison as to total generation versus that, but I can certainly put that in a report as we compile the megawatt hour data at Commissioner Hughes' request. We can certainly start to break down those numbers.
Would you provide us with that information for the last 2 months?
Last 2 months? Sure. March, February.
Total output, and then the output from solar. And
We move to the next item, Whopper fuel contract.
So there are
Spain,
two,
you wanted to say something?
I was gonna say, we requested them and they provided the two extension agreements. Following our last meeting, we forwarded those to you. That was all I was gonna say.
we're about to execute on the fuel contract with Peerless Oil. We've come to terms with them and we're substantially completed with the drafting of the contract. So we should have that executed, I'd say within 5 business days. And we finalized our procurement for the replacement to the VTOL contract that finalized that yesterday, and we should start publicly advertising that this upcoming Monday.
And these contracts have taken into consideration, we get into the hurricane season and made provisions for.
Yeah, so our dependency on diesel is much reduced. And I actually think we'll be able to build some inventory in our tanks as a result, as long as we don't have hiccups in the propane system that require us to burn diesel. We should start to slowly build some inventory as we head into hurricane season. On the LPG side, one of the final insertions into the document since we last spoke was a criterion that spoke to sourcing fuel, I think it's 70,000 barrels within a 72-hour sale of the U.S. Virgin Islands, trying to have storage someplace in close proximity that we can access in an emergency. And that was in consideration for disruptions that might be caused by storms or whatever else that might confront us. So we're providing additional scoring points to proposals that can offer a storage solution within a 72-hour sale of the Virgin Islands.
Commissioner Hughes, you have any questions?
I'd like to see the RFQ at least concurrent with when it goes public. The RFP, just to see, what we're asking people to bid on and how it's being qualified.
All right.
Is that it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, didn't have a great transmission, Mr. Knight, of your first statement. You're negotiating a consultancy agreement. Did you end up engaging a fuel consultant?
Yes, we have a fuel consultant. We've had that on board for the last 2-3 months. The earlier statement was we're finalizing our contract with Peerless Oil on the diesel, the fuel oil number 2 side of the inventory. So that arrangement is being finalized. And then I spoke to procurement for the LPG contract.
We've had some discussion about the fuel consultant and whether or not the PSC needs to engage their own. I think we had agreed that to the extent that we could live vicariously off of your relationship, that we wouldn't need to do that. I still am unclear whether or not we need to do that. Who is your consultant?
Caribbean Utility Corporation, Caribbean Utility Services.
Local company, international company. Tell us about them a little bit, please.
It's a regional company. It's a regional company. The principals have former relationships with Wärtsilä, with Carolec. But they've been in the oil and gas business in the region for going on probably over 20 years or so, as far as I can tell.
Are there any individuals related to this consultancy that are current or former employees of the authority?
No, not that I'm aware of. None of the principals that I've met are employed or former employees of the authority. And I'm pretty sure that that's the case.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, the name again of the company?
Caribbean Utility Corp or
Their
Services?
services.
Services.
How'd you find them, by the way? Questions.
There, we had a, I'll call it incident, where we had a point last fall where we had a shortage. One of the vessels that Vital provides was going into dry dock for repairs. We had a period of time when we thought we would not be able to supply LPG to our plants. As you know, we no longer have an exclusive arrangement with Vital to provide fuel. So we took the opportunity to try to source fuel through other potential providers. This company was one that did ultimately respond, trying to align us with a propane supplier. We ultimately were able to get the vessel returned and didn't have to pull the trigger. But through that relationship and conversations, I became familiar. There was a prior consultant that I think prior management had sought to engage. That consultant chose not to take the engagement for this contract. And so Plan B, we approached Caribbean Utility Services to see if they were interested in providing support, and they were.
This is different than CARELEC, Caribbean Association of Electric Service
Yes,
Providers.
this is not CARELEC, but the principal of the company, I think, served as an executive director or board member of CARELEC for many years.
Where they headquartered?
They're out of, is it Trinidad?
I don't, oh, what are we talking about?
CUC.
Yeah.
Oh, Puerto Rico.
You concluded, sure. Commissioner
Yeah,
Hughes?
nothing further, Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Knight, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is docket 620, advanced power status update.
Mr. Hart online.
Right there.
You can swear in Mr. Hart.
Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony and evidence you're about to give us is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Please state your full name for the record.
Gold Hart.
Thank you.
You may proceed, Mr. Hart.
Good morning, Commissioners. Just wanted to give you an update as requested on the agenda today. Wanted to talk just briefly for a minute. In the last few weeks, we've had substantial conversations regarding the interconnection study with a number of the parties, including Sergeant Lundy, WAPA, Mike Wynn, and the NREL folks, as well as our own. There's been discussion about, mostly in technical nature, it has to do with the EMT modeling data and the software that's suitable for that. There were discussion about grid requirements, grid codes, also the certifications that are needed for the turbines and so forth. Most of that was for the engineers and mostly in a technical nature. So I just wanted to mention that. I know that's not listed on the agenda. I do want to turn to the agenda now. We're talking about financing and permitting. We are working with a number of underwriters, both private and public, One of the underwriters we've been working with is the U.S. Department of Energy, their Title 17 Clean Energy Program, Category 1706. We have been engaged with them for well over a year now. We're making good progress. The project has been received very positively with the DOE officials. We have it's a two-step process. We are in the second half of the process, but we're under what they refer as the technical review process. We provided all the documentation that's been required. That deals with just what it says, the technical matters. They also look at other things with greenhouse gas reduction. They look at the current power generation mix and a number of items already existing, and what role that the wind turbines will play in that. We also, in working through the part two step, that basically consists of the underwriters reviewing the project. Once it meets review requirements, then we would go to term sheet negotiations and a formal commitment. Couple of reasons that we're dealing with the DOE is that they have long-term funding, but mostly they have a very competitive rate for interest for the project because of the pass-through feature that we have and the transparency under the PPA agreement. That brings significant savings to the U.S. Community ratepayers, and so we are talking about probably an estimated time frame to finish that process. I would estimate 6 to 9 months, but we're working with them to accelerate that. We're looking at other possibilities to increase the shorten the time frame. There are some challenges that we're facing with all the lending, and I'll just touch on it at a high level. Obviously, everyone is aware of the challenges that WAPA presents from based on their payment history. The recent Ernst & Young report was not particularly helpful, but it didn't really change our position or the underwriters. It did share some details that were not necessarily known before, but it also brought out the fact of the importance of getting the project that we're working on and done and the role that it plays to be part of the solution. Pardon me. As a part of that strategy that was ongoing in working with our underwriters has been to de-risk the project from a financial and insurance standpoint, frankly. I will talk a little bit more about the de-risking of the financing part, but there's a number of items that we're working on or strategies to de-risk it, to provide payment assurance for the project, because underwriters, it doesn't matter whether it's the private or the DOE or the government underwriters, they're all asking for a strategy that we can provide assurance for payment. They don't want to come in and provide capital for the project and not have timely payment. So there's a number of things that we're working on. They're not necessarily something today that I could share in a public forum. I'm happy to visit with the commission in closed session or privately one-on-one. We certainly will need the support of the PSC as we move forward with some of these strategies. Not all of them would be, some that may be suitable, some of them may not. I also want to mention that part of the conditions that we're facing. I was in Washington back in December, met with the DOE officials. At that time, it wasn't entirely clear with the transition that we have with the current presidential administration. Obviously, there's been a lot of heartburn, if you will, in Washington, D.C. from a federal agency standpoint. I know that the president announced an energy emergency on day one for January 20th. The DOE and our contacts have remained steadfast. They continue to encourage us to move forward with the project. They like the project. So we're confident that we're going to move forward. We're not asking for a giveaway or grant. We're talking about a project that they understand delivers real savings and value to the community. And so it's viable in that sense. So the other thing I want to touch on right quick is the fact that we have been Also, we've been working on some areas of the permitting. We're not as far along on that as I would like to be. Our focus has been on the underwriting side, but we have done some preliminary permitting. We're also working with some of the local stakeholders, BioImpact and others, as we move forward in that direction. So we just know that we continue to work every day, and the focus is to get the project completed as on time and sooner rather than later. So be happy to address any questions or comments that you might have.
Commissioner Hughes?
You did eventually get your lease through the Senate, right? That's all done?
Yes, sir, we did. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. Yes, we did. We have the site leases for both St. Croix and St. Thomas. Yes, sir.
Do you have current zoning issues with the sites that have to be submitted back through?
No, sir.
So the current properties that you have are properly zoned. You just have to get through the permitting process per se.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Appreciate it. Oh, could you maybe just describe, it's not clear to me how DOE is involved, because you mentioned in the same comment that you were talking with, I want to say, private third-party lenders on a DOE program. Is this a loan guarantee, a loan forgiveness? How's this work?
Well, no, it's not a loan forgiveness. What we're working with, obviously, there are the loan to cost ratios for the DOE, and part of the private lenders that we're working with, we're basically talking about bridge lending, utilizing and leveraging the investment tax credits or the ITCs to meet that requirement so that we can qualify for the DOE portion of it. We have lenders that have committed for that portion of it, but they want to make certain that the DOE is there and available for takeout or backstop. We can't actually monetize the investment tax credits till the project reaches a commercial operation date after completion. So we have to have that portion, that interim portion, handled by the private sector.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Nothing further.
Before I go to Commissioner McGrath, I wanted to follow up on the zoning question. Azar, when you first went to the legislature with the lease, wasn't there a zoning issue?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that at one time, and I'm trying to think, I don't recall the gentleman's name, the head of the DPNR, there was a issue, but that was, we worked through it, and I'm sorry, I don't have my notes in front of me, but my understanding is that they had approved the zoning for the purpose intended.
All right. Attorney Swain, do you remember that? Wasn't there an issue that ex-official Joseph had indicated that there was still a zoning issue with this? Huh?
Maybe a variance was issued.
There was a question regarding a portion of the property. Yes, there was a question, and I intended to follow up with him on that one. I don't know the answer to the question. It was a question about the zoning on a part of the property, not being clear that it permitted wind generation activity. So yes, I'll follow up with Mr. Hart, make sure that it is addressed.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say that there isn't a zoning issue, so maybe it's been rectified, but I was always under the impression that you still have to get some sort of rezoning or variance or something like that. But if you feel you don't need it, I assume that's up to you and your legal team, but you may want to double check that issue.
We will. We certainly want to be in compliance with any requirements, for sure.
I know that DPNR has been going through a lot of steps with their comprehensive land use planning, and that may be addressing the concern that we had when the lease was pending. So we'll verify those two documents as well.
All right, I have nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Staff, do you have any questions?
No, not for Mr. Hart.
Thank you.
We will follow up with Mr. Hart regarding that question.
Thank you for your presentation. You're excused. Next item is AST Clean Tech.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is Jason Levesque on here. Thank you for the invite to update you on the status of the St. John Energy from Waste.
Can you hold a minute, please? You have to be sworn.
Good morning. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony and evidence you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your full name for the record.
Full name is Jason Levescont.
Thank you.
You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item A, the status update for the land lease agreement. We're currently finalizing the application. Sincerely appreciate the help from the Public Services Commission, particularly Mr. Sprain, for putting us in touch with the right persons within the Property and Procurement Department, particularly Assistant Commissioner Richards and Ms. Dalam Singh. So we hope to submit that application by the end of the week. I'll switch to item C, which is WAPA status progress. We had a meeting in person in St. Thomas on the 26th of March with Mr. Carl Knight and the C-suite team that we're just currently presenting. In summary of that meeting, Mr. Knight and the C-suite team are very much in full support of the project. And they committed to progressing the PPA with that respect. However, Mr. Knight mentioned that he wanted to see a true reflection on the cost per kilowatt for the project in the value that it created. And that was basically pending a tripartite meeting between ourselves, WAPA, and Waste Management Authority, such that the actual value created by not having to transport waste off of the island is truly reflected in ultimately the cost per kilowatt. That's important in terms of understanding as we scale once we embark on the project on St. Thomas and then ultimately on St. Croix. So I've had a discussion with Mr. Griffith. He has committed to a discussion with Mr. Knight prior to a meeting that was arranged for next week, but it's just been pushed to the 25th of April to conclude that. And that also entails item B, which is also pending the discussion with Waste Management Authority as far as the supply agreement is concerned. So that will all be entailed within that discussion. With that, I open it to any questions.
Commissioner Hughes?
You mentioned the scaling of the project. Assuming we can get this going in St. John, you'd like to address some of our issues in St. Thomas and St. Croix. The commission's likely to have an opinion on where you go first, since we do regulate both the Waste Management Authority and the Power Authority and are well aware of the issues that we're trying to solve for both of them on both islands. So just keep in mind that I don't know that the assumption would be that you go first to St. Thomas, who has a new generation system and a functioning landfill that isn't under consent to close, as opposed to St. Croix that has a landfill that is full, has to close, and has old generation that needs supplementation. I would like you to be aware that this process of getting through property procurement on the best day seems to take forever. Any lease that goes through property procurement has to eventually be signed by the governor, the attorney general, and the president of the Senate. And whereas it seems like it would be simple to execute a simple land lease, Mr. Hart just spent 2 years trying to get that done with the full support of the governor. So Mr. Richards was the principal involved in that exercise, and it could take you a fair amount of time to get that done, sir. Just be aware it's not a simple process here in the territory. As much as we tried to help and expedite that process, we still were not successful at the PSC at getting it done in what anyone thought was a reasonable timeframe. You mentioned that your tri-party discussion with Waste Management and the Power Authority somewhat hinges on the transportation costs of waste off of the island. That sounds to me like a tipping fee, which is fine. But in our prior conversations, we weren't really all that concerned with the economic consideration at Waste Management, so much as just a simple PPA for the power at the Power Authority. That has changed?
I wouldn't say that it has changed. Ultimately, the strategy behind St. John is its significantly small scale that neither the tipping fee nor the sales of kilowatts are appreciable, but it is an opportunity to gather data and to be able to model what a scaled up version would look like. But I think Mr. Knight has a good point in terms of there's a parameter that isn't adequately assessed in this, which is a unique situation of St. John, which is just a transfer site moving waste off of the island that is costing somewhere in the region of $2.8 million that he would like to see captured somewhere.
So your economic model has both the PPA for power and presumably a tipping fee, which I'm fine with. It makes sense. You're diverting municipal solid waste off of our landfill, and that typically justifies some recovery by you of the costs that you save us. We regulate both utilities independently, and you're going to need to get both that PPA and any revenue arrangement you make with Waste Management approved by this commission. Not a tough process, but we're not, I think, going to want to encumber Mr. Knight with costs. We tend to like these things to be standalone. So, you know, whatever it makes sense for Mr. Knight to pay you for the power is a function of Mr. Knight's business, not Waste Management's business. It's good that you need to know those for your own internal business model, but we're probably not interested at the PSC in having you commingle those revenue streams because we've got to answer to two different ratepayer bases here. So if you can keep the economics of that directed in the direction of the utility you're dealing with, Mr. Knight can decide what he wants to pay you for the power, and he can come to the PSC and see if we agree, or we can set the rate, which we did in the PPA agreements for solar and wind. It really is a rate consideration. Mr. Knight should be answering the technical and interconnection questions, and the PSC should be answering the rate question. So you might want to involve Attorney Sprain or our staff members in that discussion. I don't know why WAPA thinks that it should determine that rate because we make rates in the territory, they don't. So I'd like our people to be on that discussion because ultimately we have to agree that they can recover that through the LEAC. Same with Waste Management.
Appreciate that, Commissioner Hughes. And I'm joined with Dan Levine, who's also on the call. I don't know, Dan, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I don't. Thank you.
How are you doing with the local St. John community?
So we did meet with the community. Mrs. Megan, excuse me, I've forgotten her last name, Love City Strong, and very supportive of the whole concept of what we were doing. Of course, we would have follow-up meetings closer to the project execution with them to keep them abreast of everything that we're doing. And we did also meet with the recycling folks adjacent to the intended facility site which is just to the north of the Waste Management Authority transfer site. They had a lot of questions. We answered those questions, haven't had any feedback from those folks, but there's a lot of symbiotic relationship that can be had between their activities in this recycling area and also the Waste Management Authority transfer area, of course.
I would imagine and speculate that you'll find out if you have any real local issues when you try and get this lease through the Senate approval process. That's when that will surface for you, the true resistance to the project, if there is any. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing further.
Johnny Spain.
Good morning, Mr. LeViscount. Floyd Sprain here. I apologize that when you were on island a few months ago, I was off island and we didn't get a chance to meet, but I did want to invite you to contact me and we could set up a call, preferably before your next meeting with Waste Management and WAPA. I would like to have the opportunity to discuss a few of those issues on pricing and rate structure with you, with both Waste Management and WAPA. I hope I can offer some useful insights to you and help move this process along.
Thank you. Much appreciate your support, Mr. Sprain. We're also supported by Ms. Monroe as well, who is following all of the journey that we have to go through to get all of these pieces in place.
Very good. That was my only comment. I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Great.
There's nothing further. Thank you for your presentation and good luck.
Thank you.
That brings us to
And privileges of the floor. Motion to adjourn. No objection, order.
None.
Thank you, everyone. Commissioner Hughes, safe travels. We'll
Thank you,
see in the
sir.
next go round.
Good to see you guys. Hopefully briefly, maybe in May.
All right, Commissioner